you believe that we started recording right in the middle of 2020 with all of the COVID and lockdowns going on around us, unable to meet up? So like many a young gentleman, we turned to the internet for our entertainment. Tried to find a place where we could meet up and talk about the good, the bad, and that time that Stu saw a pelican on the canal. In order to facilitate our dreams of answering all of the big questions in film, and after a few attempts at recording via other methods to various levels of success, we found Zencastr, a super easy web-based one-stop shop for recording. Log in and you're ready to record in a matter of seconds. It doesn't take a tech genius to get high quality audio or video. And on top of that, the one time we have had an issue, the fact that the multi-layered backups are stored locally means it's easily fixed all in browser. There are plenty of tools you need when you start podcasting, so let Zencastr take that headache away as it offers a place to record, edit and distribute all from one website. Any lazy bones Jones can pick up and play and have studio quality audio or 4K video put out for the world to see when using Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code CAGEFIGHTING and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. And now, hit the music. Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man Andy Gillard here. Hope everybody's doing well out there right now.
Hello everyone, Stu here. I do feel like we should be kind of talking in a kind of Brooklyn accent today, and with some kind of bow tie or dressed up attire, talking about this subject. I can't believe how much New York there is. I mean, it's understandable. It's obviously everyone's read the title; they know what this is about.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
I hate 50 seconds in. But when you're podcasting, they then try and jump a surprise on you because this is what we were talking about today. When you read the title, so you know what the surprise is.
Yeah, the amount of times that, especially on film podcasts, where they're like trying to surprise you with the film they're talking about.
Yeah,
but they've got a picture of Michael Keaton there. So like, well, it's obviously about him, then, isn't it? Yeah, it's ridiculous. Interesting though, because obviously Scorsese. I had looked through his filmography, like in preparation for this, because I feel like I've seen a lot of Scorsese. And then I looked at his filmography and I was like, no. I bet I haven't even seen half of these films. There are so many of them, dating back so long. They're like you can't even touch the sides. I mean, I know I've seen all of his big hitters, but there's some films in there I've never even heard of. There's one from 2016, Sleep, I think it was called, with Andrew Garfield. I have never heard of this film before.
No.
Completely new to me.
I mean, I haven't even seen that many. I mean, looking at it, I've probably seen 10 of 73. When you look at all I know a lot of that's like episode credits as well, but still.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of films in there, especially 70s and 80s ones that I've got no idea about what they are. Like we'll talk about later, Bringing Out the Dead, which, again, the usual thing with these Cage films, which this is not spoilers. This is not one of the terrible ones.
Far
where no one's heard of them, and you kind of understand that. But a Scorsese film that no one's heard of, that's relatively recent as well, is pretty strange. But there's others. It's not the only case, like I thought it was. I thought this is just like a lost gem that's been buried somehow. But there's loads of them that I've never heard of.
I think that the ones for me that I know I've not seen many of his documentaries, because he's a proper sort of music-easter, I think you'd call him. Like, he's got ones with the Stones, George Harrison. I have seen the Harrison one. It's like 3.5 hours long. It's a long old one, but it's exceptionally well made. The Bob Dylan one as well. Christ, I can't remember what that was called. I've seen some of it, but it's so long that I never got to finish the whole thing. So there's so many of them, and like I feel kind of embarrassed that I class myself as a big fan of his, and I've been lucky if I've seen half of his films at this point. It's just what an incredible breadth of work this man has got.
Which, when you think about it and how old he is, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he's older than I thought he was, which is a good and bad thing, I suppose.
Yes, he's born in 1942, so he's what, 82? Yeah, about to be 82, I think, is it? So yeah, like, he's been going for some time. His earliest film credit, looking at his IMDb page, where are we? It appears to be. Oh, this one, I need to talk to you about a Nick Cage thing that's also come up whilst I remember. So his earliest film. Christ, I'm scrolling, and it's such a long list of stuff. Director, Vesuvius 4 in 1959. 1959. It's a 10-minute short. There's one before that, but there's no date attached to it, called The Big Shave. Vesuvius. So the 50s we're going back to start Scorsese. That's how long he's been going on for. Incredible. Whilst I remember, I was looking on Nick Cage's filmography to make a list for the next few months of what films we're going to watch. And you know how we've joked about his filmography keeps getting longer because he just keeps adding 4, 5, 6 films at a go. Well, his first ever acting credit changed when I looked on there the other day. So obviously we've got Best of Times, which was a new addition because originally when we first started this podcast, his first ever acting role was on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But then Best of Times appeared from nowhere. His third acting credit is The Outsiders, which is a Francis Ford Coppola film. That's now on there. So that was never on there. That wasn't on there 2 weeks ago. So that's only just been put in. That's a film from 1983. He's obviously got a walk-on part and what have you, but that wasn't on there a couple of weeks ago. So originally, Valley Girl was his first speaking role. It's now potentially The Outsiders. I don't know. So that's now been added to the list. So it's getting longer at this end and it's getting longer at the beginning as well. Just ridiculous.
Well, you could say that it never got as good as Valley Girl ever again, really, but...
It started on a high.
But that's a bit like last week's episodes of On the Corridor Crew, of the visual effects artists react to. And they had a film on there from 100 years ago and looking at how they did, called The Great Flood of whatever. It's last week's episode if you go on there. And they used effects with miniatures and overlays and different film techniques 100 years ago. And it looks better than The Flash.
There's no babies in microwaves there.
Yeah, it's like how they've got this carriage as well, where it's when they broke it down, it's like, oh yeah, of course, this is how they did it, and it's like they've got footage of a black carriage with coming across a bridge, and they've just filmed the carriage on some concrete, and then you can see where it kind of fades out at the wrong point, but again, 100 years ago.
100 years ago, yeah.
And then you look at the water, and obviously the water's on a miniature because it looks all wrong because of how water works. But it was 100 years ago, and you think, this must have looked amazing. When even 50 years ago, this would have looked amazing, and it's been lost to time. And now someone's, again, bought this set, found it out of nowhere, restored it, put it up on YouTube, and now they're reacting to it.
But it's like when you see, or you read about clips of when people would go to the cinema back in the silent era, and when the train would come towards the camera, and people in the cinema would jump because they felt like, and you can completely understand why, because it must have been so alien to them back then that how does your brain compute that?
Well, that happened with when Mum came to Birmingham IMAX with us to watch Gravity in 3D. And she got all because it was in 4DX, I'm sure it was, and all the effects and when the things coming out of the screen and the depth of everything, and she got it then. Even then, that was just for the real D thing at the start, where it throws the things at you from the screen.
Yeah,
it was like that. She blinched.
It's just a natural reaction, though, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
Incredible. So before I get into the meat of the podcast, which is going to be looking at the themes of his work, Do you remember what the first film of Scorsese's was that you saw?
I think it was Raging Bull, just because of the whole boxing thing and Rocky and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of this stuff, I was trying to think when it would have been, because obviously it's not going to be at the time. I mean, when was that? 1980?
1980, that.
But it obviously wasn't at the time because I was 6 years old when that came out. So I'm pretty sure it was on when we had Sky through Telewest, Sky Movies or Sky Cinema, which it changed names over and over again, didn't it? So whatever the Sky film package was at the time, we had sport and film. And so there was a lot of films on there that I'd never seen or had the chance to see because obviously I couldn't rent them because I was a child. But they didn't care. They just let me watch whatever I wanted to at home. And I think it was around about then, so I was probably about 10, 11, something like that, when I watched it. And it was like, yeah, this is... I think one of the themes is these are proper films for grown-ups. And,
I know what you mean.
And yes, I think it was Raging Bull. And a lot of these, again, like you, when I looked at it and I thought, what have I seen and what haven't I seen? And there is maybe 10 out of the whole thing that I've seen. And a lot of them are at least 20, 25 years ago. So it's almost like this could be a side project now, watching them all again.
Well, that's it. I've made a list on my computer of the ones I haven't seen that I want to try and source and watch a lot of them. Especially the old ones. Like last night I watched Mean Streets, which I'd never seen. I think it's 1973. Mean Streets was. Great film. Harvey Keitel, Robert De Niro. I'm like, how on earth have I not seen this film before? It's one that I've heard the title of and it's often spoken of in, held in great regard. So yeah, there's quite a few now that I'm thinking I would really like to go and try and discover some of these ones.
If you watch... there's a triple for you. Mean Streets, the original Bad Lieutenant, and The Warriors. Watch them 3 back to back.
I mean, yeah, that's a tremendous trilogy to be... I really like Warriors, and it's one of those films I've probably only seen maybe 2 or 3 times. So it's not spoiled for me in the slightest at this point. It's just on a very casual, maybe once a decade kind of a watching. Brilliant movie.
And that, I mean, I only watched that because when the game came out, so I had no idea what it was about. And that game was excellent as well.
I never played the game.
Yeah,
PlayStation 2, wasn't it?
Yeah. You'll be able to emulate it now easily.
Yeah, I imagine so. I never got around to playing that one, but I did hear good things about it.
I'm sure it was on PSP as well. But it was really good. So everyone thought, it's just going to be Streets of Rage with a Warriors license, which is a license that no one knows what this is anyway. And that was us at the time. So, again, so what was that? PlayStation 2. So, we were 2000. Yeah, so it was at uni definitely when I watched The Warriors because we torrented it for one of the first films we did. But yeah, that's another one. It's all in the very similar genre.
It is. And I feel like those films, even though you've not seen them before, you know quite a lot of those films because they did seem to break through into the mainstream. So like Cape Fear, for example, I didn't see Cape Fear until very recently. I knew the story of it because The Simpsons parodied it. Like, I was kind of surprised they didn't do the HMS Pinafore at the end of it like they did in The Simpsons, because in my mind, that's how I know Cape Fear. So I was kind of surprised that when I watched the film, I knew quite a lot of it all from The Simpsons. So much of his work has permeated into the mainstream. I mean, we spoke about this before with some of the parody films where, you know these movies without ever actually having watched them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a mark of greatness and sometimes it's a mark of being less than great. But with Scorsese, I think it's very much because his work is almost universal. Like, I feel like there's a lot of something in there for everybody at different stages of his career.
It's almost like a kind of retro version of that meme question that I said last week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I've got a list of some of the common themes which he explores in his work, and I thought we'll try and tie them into a film, and we can then talk about the film as well as the theme. So the first thing that I've got on my list is violence and crime and the impact it has on society and the individual. This will then lead into another one, but I think this is probably the biggest one that he really does explore in his movies. I think you can probably touch on Wolf of Wall Street, King of Comedy, Cape Fear, Departed, Mean Streets, Killers of the Flower Moon. They all have an element of criminality to them, which the world then expands around. Goodfellas, I think, is probably his most popular film. Is that controversial take, or would you say that's probably about right?
Poor. I don't know if you could. It's probably his most well-known film, but then is it that, or is it The Irishman now because of the reasons and the fact that it was the massive thing about it being on Netflix at the time? That's a good question, actually. I know what you mean. You'd say Scorsese, you'd say Goodfellas straight away. Like you, but it's like you got a choice of 3 or 4. It's like Tarantino. What would you say? Like Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. They were the ones that are coming to your mind straight away, other than the newer stuff. So yeah, probably it's probably his most famous, I'd say, rather than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I kind of wonder if the younger generation, I wonder what their go-to would be for Scorsese. Once you've, started watching films in the last 10, 15 years, I wonder if they would have the touchstone of Goodfellas. I'm intrigued by that to see if that's changed, because to me, when I think of Scorsese, the first one I think of, anything with De Niro, anything with Pesci, and obviously he's got both of those, so that's the go-to. So I would love to know if anyone, any of the newbies out there, where they go when it comes to Scorsese. But yeah, Goodfellas, obviously, it's all about the crime life. It's all about the family. This is the film for me when it comes to violence and criminality in his movies. Now, I know you've got the scene in Casino where Joe Pesci's character, Anthony, the Ant Spilotro, puts the guy's head in a vice, and I think that's probably more violent. But there's something about Goodfellas, the almost insidiousness of mob life. Like, it doesn't glamorize it as much as just show that actually there's a real seedy, shitty element to it as well. And I think that's what I love about Goodfellas, is that it doesn't just show you the high life of a gangster, it shows you the other side of it as well.
I think that's the thing with all of them. Pretty much all of these films, like I said before, it's films for grown-ups where it's not hardly glamorizing anything. It's just showing reality. And then you do get both sides of it. It's maybe, we'll get into it later, one of the contributing factors why it's so good for me. But there was like for a long, long time, I would always go Goodfellas over Godfather. Always. But after I watched all 3 of you can't really count the third one, but the first 2, and especially Godfather Part 2, maybe they're on a par with each other, just in different ways. Yeah. I don't know, man.
I think it's a real difficult one to weigh up, because they both feel like, even though they're both about quote-unquote family life, they're very different elements of the mob and the mafia, aren't they? One is the traditional Sicilian one, and this is the American Italians rather than Italian version of what it is to be in the mafia. It is quite an interesting one to compare, because that is probably, when it comes to mob films, those are probably the 2 biggest names, aren't they? Godfather and Goodfellas.
Yeah.
It'd be a difficult one to weigh up, to be perfectly honest. I'd really struggle to choose one.
Obviously, the best film about family is Fast and Furious. We all know this. But
well, it turns out this week that Tyrese hasn't heard his lessons and hasn't been paying his child support, so he doesn't know about family.
But it does mean he's going to be back, because he needs that. He needs that.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Every cloud. I mean, he's not the worst person this week, is he? So, have you seen how young she was as well? With
no, I haven't.
19. God. So on the book, not wrong, not all wrong. Not all wrong. Questionable, considering how old he is.
Yeah.
But fair play to him.
To completely change the topic, it is funny how people seem to be reacting on Twitter and TikTok to it. Like, I don't know why you give a shit. How does it affect your life in the slightest? It really doesn't, does it?
I saw a load of them like saying, oh, I thought he was one of the good ones and all this stuff. And he would never cheat on his wife. Look, he's a rock star. Of course he would.
Yeah, I'm more surprised that they just didn't have an open relationship, because that seems to be the standard when it comes to people in rock bands.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just old and cynical when it comes to this stuff, but I just find it weird.
Well, it just happens over and over again. And unless they're touring with the band, these things are going to happen, are they? It's like you look at the, when I was watching, again, all off topic, but when I watched Receiver on Netflix, which is actually a good series, maybe not as good as Quarterback, but still. But you've got George Kittle on there. Very strange, man. He did us in good and proper on Monday night as well, so. But so did the rest of the Jets defence, but that's a different story altogether. But yeah, his wife is so, like, she might as well be attached to him. And George Kittle's not the most attractive man in the world, is he? Let's be fair. But they're like all over each other, like lovesick puppies, and he's in his 30s, but she's at every game with him. He goes looking for her in the crowd. So romance does exist still when you've got lots of money.
Must do. It must do. Interesting. Anyway, Goodfellas. Where were we? Yeah. So Goodfellas for me, I think this might have been the first Scorsese film that I watched, or it's at least the first one I remember watching. I don't know what it was. It was the Ray Liotta of it all, I think, was like the entry point to it. Because even though De Niro and Pesci, obviously Pesci, we grew up with Joe Pesci. He went from Goodfellas straight into Home Alone. That was his 1990, which it's kind of mind-blowing when you look back. But as a younger person, when I would have seen this film, which would probably have been pre-DVD, so we'd still have been in the VHS world at this point, Ray Liotta was almost a bit more recognisable, I think, to a younger audience. I'm not entirely sure why that would have been, but I felt like he was the entry point into this, and it was a film that had been widely discussed elsewhere. Again, I think there was probably a Simpsons parody that would have been my link into this movie. So having watched it then, and from that moment onwards, I was a Scorsese fan. I was like, I wanted to watch as much of his stuff as I could possibly get my hands on, because he was such an interesting director. Like, his films were very inviting, and there was something, like, it felt romantic in a way. I know he doesn't glamorize it, but he does sort of romanticize it to the outsider. Like, you do sort of wish you were part of that world, albeit one that isn't going to experience the downfall that the guys do at the end of it. But yeah, for me, Goodfellas probably is the best he's ever done, in my eyes. It's top two. Yeah. There's another one we'll mention. There's a few in this list. It's one of those things, like, when we did that Oasis 5 songs. I kind of feel like if you ask me tomorrow, I'll have a completely different answer for you. But how I'm feeling right here, right now,
you know what I mean?
It might be good. Yeah, it might be Goodfellas. But I'll probably say exactly the same thing about the next film we'll be discussing in a minute anyway. So, yeah. Goodfellas, Stu, tell me what you think.
Yeah. I'm going to echo everything you said. And I was just thinking, you're going to be exactly the same as me, where you would have seen Joe Pesci in Home Alone first.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then watching him seeing this little guy be all cuddly and the not so lovable rogue in Home Alone 2, to then being a proper nasty bastard in this, and Casino and every other film that he appears in. It was a bit of a culture shock, because that was not the Joe Pesci that I, as a young child, imagined.
No.
But yeah, like you said, it doesn't age either, which is a nice thing about it. it almost works as a period piece in itself, and it's not designed for that. Obviously, it's just out all the time. But like when I was watching Final Destination last week, and you look at that and think, this is so obviously 90s, it kind of takes you away from it all because it is so 90s. Whereas this, it doesn't matter. It could be set any time.
Yeah, I know what you mean there, because it's, even though it was contemporary when it was released, there is a timeless element to it. Whereas I feel like Final Destination, for example, that kind of just wants to be now, regardless of when you're watching it, it wants to be, this is what's happening in the world as it is. Whereas Goodfellas feels like this is what it is at this point in history. You can move on, but this is going to stay here. And I think that's why it's not aged badly at all. Like, you know, mobile phones that you see and everything now, there's none of that issue with it. It doesn't detract from where it is. But Joe Pesci, I mean, just going back to him for a minute, it took me years to realise that he wasn't predominantly a comedic actor.
No.
Because we had him as, you know, was it Harry? Was that the character's name in Home Alone?
Harry. Yeah.
You had 2 Home Alones and we had My Cousin Vinny. So to me, that's Joe Pesci. And then you see Goodfellas, you see Casino, you see these other films. Like, oh no, you actually had a bit of a mean side to you that I never knew about. And he's probably more of that than he was the other. So yeah, he must be 2 different things to 2 completely different generations.
And then you hold the stories of Home Alone and the fact that they all that stuff that he improvised himself and was never part of the script. He just censored himself because it was in a kid's film and not his usual thing.
It's that. I mean, he's a proper actor, isn't he? Like, and I'll probably say that about a lot of people in this podcast today. Because I always assumed he was this silly comedic nonsense. I never realised that he was actually a bona fide, proper actor. And it's not until you see him do this work and you realise, yeah, you were... Like, the fact that you were in there with a 10-year-old Macaulay Culkin, it's kind of wild to think that's how far ahead he must have been in his career at that point.
I was just looking here. Well, I couldn't think of what her name was. Lorraine Bracco. No, the wife.
Yes. Oscar-nominated Lorraine Bracco, who also played Dr. Melfi in The Sopranos. She was Tony Soprano's psychiatrist.
Yeah, well, it's nothing like being typecast, is there? No one talks about the women in this film, which for me to come out with this statement is mad, but all of them are good. And then where this is a very man film, and yet they're not there just for a bit of tits and ass. They're actually there for a reason. And
I know exactly what you mean.
Oscar nominated for it, which I didn't know. So there you are.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I was going to touch on in a bit when we look at some of the Oscar nominated roles. Scorsese gets a lot of stick for his women. Like, he says, a lot of criticism for Scorsese is that he doesn't write women very well. But conversely, of the actors who've been nominated, 40% of the actors who've been nominated for roles in Scorsese's films have been women. For someone who is predominantly seen as a man's director, 40% of the 26 acting nominations that have come from his films have been women. I think that kind of speaks for itself.
And you never get these people who moan about this stuff. They never seem to be the women who are involved in the films, are they? So I think if that speaks for itself. It's virtue signaling on behalf again and finding things
just
that are
kind of
there.
feel like it.
Yeah, it's finding things that are not there for the sake of it. Like, it's not fucking Barbie. It's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yet, like you said, 40% is insane.
It is because the women don't make up 40% of the cast, which I do think could be an issue. It's very rare that, the cast is a good 50-50. They are predominantly men on the cast, but the women who he gets in, the way he directs them and the way they act for him often leads to an Oscar nomination. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and it's if it was like the female Ghostbusters film and it was about women and then it was bad, then you'd have a point.
Yeah,
but it's not. So not everything has to be diverse and inclusive. It can just be what it is. Don't understand.
Yeah, we've said this before. Like, it has to be within its own world, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It would be weird to have a film about gangsters and half of the film is about their home life, for example. It just wouldn't quite work in these terms. Like, we'll get on to with Bringing Out the Dead as well, but I thought Patricia Arquette was fantastic.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah. So yeah, excellent. But yeah, big fan of Goodfellas. The next theme, which I think is fairly closely linked to criminality and violence, this would be morality and redemption, which I think is another thing in which Scorsese often delves into his films. This is a staple of the gangster movie. Obviously, you get the rise and the fall. That goes back to like the Edward G. Robinson days of gangster films in the 30s. Mm-hmm. It's been around forever. It's clearly something which has made an impact on Scorsese. Like, we could just as easily be discussing Goodfellas for this topic as well. But I think that Taxi Driver would be the best depiction of this on screen, because it's looking at morality and redemption through someone who is broken. Because his views on morality and redemption are completely skewed. Like, he thinks he will get redemption by acting the way that he thinks he's wrong. He sees, like, he's returned from, was it Vietnam in this film? I think he's a Vietnam vet who returned to New York, and he talks about, the filth and the skunk pussies on the street and how it's destroyed that world. So he thinks that the only way to do that is for him to go and mingle with the filth, to get in there and be violent towards them, to do what he thinks is wrong in order to come out on the other side of it all.
It's a story about PTSD. It's exactly what it is.
100%. Yeah. It is.
You look at, I know we said it a couple of years ago, how Joker was just this in a DC skin, in a way. And you can king of comedy and whatever. But yeah, and again, Jodie Foster and Sybil Shepherd both in this film.
Oscar nominated Jodie Foster in this film, yes.
There we are. Yeah, and I think this is one I can't remember when I watched it. Yeah, I obviously did, and I remember it. And I didn't own it on DVD, like one of Apocalypse Now and all them, when I went through that phase of buying every classic you can possibly get hold of. And I probably bought Memento instead of this, which is what it is, I suppose. I still haven't seen the Memento for a long, long time. I need to watch it again. It started appearing on Twitter for some reason. Like, it's getting a renaissance.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah, I've seen like 3 Memento gifts in the last week, and I don't know why.
Yeah, that is very odd. Great film, though, to be fair.
Yeah, I think Taxi Driver is the one. Like what I said earlier, they're films for grown-ups. This is absolutely the case, and it's not like films for Andre Gillard. It's proper. That's not what these are. They're films for adults who like proper things and drama. Yeah,
but it does also have that. I don't want to say highfalutin, because that makes it sound like it's arrogant, but it does have that side of it being, an elevated drama. Like, it's not just a grown-up film. There is depth to it, where it looks at mental health and society's ills, as well as just being a grown-up story. There is depth to this movie, which I think, I don't know what 70s cinema was like. Like, obviously not being there at the time, it's difficult to really say, but but this feels like this would have been a watershed of that period. Like, this must have made an impact, surely.
Well, you compare this to Shaft, and then they're not the same.
Yeah, it's right, because a lot of the stuff that I think of when I think of 70s either tends to be comedy or blaxploitation types of movies. They seem to be what stick out in my mind. Obviously, not being old enough to know any different, I'd be kind of interested to see a little bit more about that period. Is this De Niro's best performance? It's certainly his most memed.
Yeah, with Scorsese, yes, I'd say so. Then I'm thinking Meet the Parents.
Hated
Have you-
that film.
I was just gonna say, did you bother?
I've seen the first one, but I've not seen any of the sequels because I just didn't like it.
The second one was okay. I ain't seen any more than that. But I didn't think it'd be your kind of thing at all.
No, not really.
But yeah, I think this is what made De Niro the kind of hard bastard role that people think of him as?
Potentially. It feels like it's... I don't think it's his best. We will talk about his best. But I think this is his most iconic. Because everybody knows that.
Everyone knows.
To me,
yeah.
Everyone knows that. Whether you've seen this film or you haven't, you know what that scene is. So I think it's his most iconic. I do think there is one better performance, though. This is probably his second best, personally.
Yeah, he's probably up there with like the Darth Vader, the "I'm your father" line, and like, everyone, like, you're born knowing this stuff, even if you don't know how and why. Like the lyrics to Step songs, which even you know.
I know that the Bee Gees one they did, but that's not because it's a Step song. That's because it's a Bee Gees song. Where am I? Right, so that was... Yeah, so Taxi Driver, I think... It's probably... Yeah, I'd say it's probably the most memeable of his films, almost. Because I remember watching, like, The Simpsons, that it's referenced in The Simpsons, and I feel like when it comes to wider societal knowledge of stuff, The Simpsons is a massive part of it. I know you never watched The Simpsons, which still kind of blows my mind. But for everybody else in the world, The Simpsons is a way into a lot of other pop culture stuff, and I feel like that's probably the biggest one. But then I remember watching Game On, which we mentioned on our British comedy podcast. I remember, was it Matthew, the main character in that? I remember him posing in the mirror doing that scene. And I remember knowing bits of this film again before ever actually having seen this movie, because it had permeated into everyone's psyche. You're born knowing these things, which is such a bizarre thing to say.
It's a bit like Here's Johnny as well. That's another one.
Yeah, it is. It is. But so Jodie Foster, she's an actor who, like, she's grown up into being, a fairly solid actor. But I can't say she's someone whose work I've ever followed to any great degree. Like, if she's in something, I'll watch it if it's on. But she's not someone I've ever actually followed her movie career. And I'm not sure why, because whenever I've seen her anything, she's pretty good, to be fair.
Yeah, even you look at like schlocky things like Contact, which I know a lot of people have an irrational love for Contact. I 4/5 of that film I really enjoyed, and then the end, and I thought, oh, okay, that's it. That's what it was then. That was a bit Shyamalan. But
yeah, it's a bit, yeah.
But then you are right though, because you look at her in True Detective season 4, which was awful at the end, but she was good in it. She was probably the best thing about it.
Yeah, and from what I can tell, like, I think she's done quite a bit of directing work and stuff over the last few years. It's always well received, but I don't know what it is that I don't even know anyone who could say that they're a Foster fan.
Yeah,
maybe it's an American thing. I don't know, but she doesn't seem to have really broken through into having this iconic status in this country, at least. I don't know. I don't know if I'm being harsh there or not, because she has got quite the back catalogue. So I don't know, but she's fantastic in this. And what was she? She was 12 or the character at least was 12. So I'm guessing she wouldn't have been much older at least at this point. So, like, to have played the character that she did, the 12-year-old prostitute, that's a heavy load. That's a heavy burden for an actor to take on their shoulders at such a young age. And she was tremendous in this movie, fully deserving her Best Supporting Actress nomination.
I mean, I thought you was going to say it's a heavy load for a 12-year-old prostitute to take.
Which very careful with my words there.
Yeah. I'm sure Dave Grohl would agree. But you're right. You were right though, because I'm trying to think. Like, has anyone ever mentioned Jodie Foster ever? The biggest, like, in recent history was when she came out. That was the first time I'd heard about her for years. and then she was able to do doing things again and in the public eye again. And it seemed like she'd gone away. But then you look at IMDb and she hasn't gone away at all. She's done lots of things that no one's ever seen.
Steadily doing like a film every other year or so, pretty much, when you look at it.
Yeah.
And then they're, in the worst case scenario, they're like a 3 out of 5. They're watchable, if nothing else, when you look through her films.
Was she...
Obviously, the high point of her career would have been Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
I think she won the Oscar for that, if I remember rightly. I suppose that is such a high bar that to then try and hit that again must be quite a tough job to do.
Oh, I was just thinking the one that just jumped into my head then, Panic Room. That was...
Cillian Murphy, was that the... Oh no, I'm thinking of Red Eye, the one on the plane.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen Panic Room.
Oh, you got to watch Panic Room. It's her and Kristen Stewart as well.
I do like Kristen Stewart. David Fincher.
Yeah, it's really good. Forrest Whitaker, your mate.
Jared Leto's in it. Fucking hell.
Yeah, but he's not being Jared Leto. He's fine. It doesn't really matter. I didn't even know he was in it until reading this. I went to cinema to watch this and all.
Decent cast, that is.
22 years ago.
I remember it coming out, but for whatever reason, never really interested me. But actually looking at it now, that looks like the kind of film I'd probably enjoy.
Yeah.
It's giving me Trespass vibes, but I'm hoping not.
No, it's not. I mean, it's probably, if anything, it's probably closer to Phone Booth in the kind of tension way.
Yeah.
Which again, no one talks about that film, maybe because Phone Booths don't exist anymore. Other than just to piss it. I saw one that had been turned into a little library in a little village somewhere. Like, one of the little ones where you just return the book and you take it and it's like a community thing.
Yes.
Yeah, you tried doing that in Wentzfield.
That ain't going to happen, is it? Like you say, he'll just be covered in piss with your neighbours. Terrible. One of the reasons that I think that Scorsese often looks at morality in his films would be due to his Catholic upbringing. So I think that obviously religion does play a role in his filmography. Obviously, The Last Temptation of Christ, our mate Willem Dafoe returning as Jesus Christ himself. A film about guilt, faith, redemption appears again. Doubt. Ultimately, it's about human temptation, but the complexities of life played out in Christian mythology on a different timeline almost. But I think the best one to talk about in this would be Gangs of New York. Obviously, it's centred around the Catholic-Protestant feud, religious iconography throughout this movie, using the institutions of religion as a place of refuge. So Gangs of New York, I think, might be a good one when you look at the Catholicism of Scorsese almost. I think it's probably the best one. And interestingly, we've got a TV show coming out as well, which I didn't realise till researching this episode.
Is he going to be the same?
I assume it'll be different characters. Let me have a look, because he's directing one of the episodes. Gangs of New York TV series. Plot is unknown at this time, it says. Series directed by Martin Scorsese. It must be very early in the production of it, so not much is said. I can't imagine you're going to get DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz and... was it Cameron Diaz in this, or am I...
No, I don't think.
Oh, I'm getting it mixed up with Heather Graham, maybe?
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's been so long since I've seen Gangs of New York. No, it was Cameron Diaz. It was Cameron Diaz. And obviously Daniel Day-Lewis. Which
one's Heather Graham in then?
That is a good question. And looking at this list,
it's not, is it? It's Vera Farmiga you're thinking of, not Heather Graham. They look very similar sometimes in The Departed.
That could be it, to be fair. Yeah. But looking at the cast for Gangs of New York, there are so many of these faces that I'd completely forgotten, because I probably haven't seen this film since it first came out.
Yeah, same.
This has been a long, long time since I've seen this. I remember DiCaprio, obviously Daniel Day-Lewis was everywhere during the production of this one. Jim Broadbent, John C. Reilly, Liam Neeson, Brendan Gleeson, Stephen Graham, Eddie Marsan. This is, Lawrence Gilliard Jr. from The Wire as well. So, yeah, quite a few faces in this one. This is definitely one of the films that I want to rewatch because it's been such a long time since I've seen it. I remember bits and bobs about it, but I remember it being the biggest thing in the world when it was out.
Well, it's only 3 hours long as well. I'm sure it is. Mm. So you look at it and you think, I remember that being, because when was it? About 20 odd years ago? 2002. Sorry, 2002 even. 2002. No, it was 2002.
It was 22 years ago, I was trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, so you are talking like Lord of the Rings being one of the longest films for a long time, and then this comes out a year later. Yeah, I remember that being one of the things about it, like people talking about it. It might be on that thing with, it was just film 2002, it would have been called. It would have been called that, wouldn't it? With Jonathan Ross. Was Jonathan Ross on it then?
I think Ross took over in 2000.
Yeah, it rings a bell.
I think.
But I remember whoever hosted that program anyway, there was a whole talking point about films being too long and how you got to sit still in the cinema for that long. That was definitely a talking point at the time.
Mm.
But again, like you, I've watched it once since because it's sitting over there. I can see. But even that's got to be over 10 years ago. And I remember sitting there and not feeling that long at all. Even though it's very dense. It's not like Killers of the Flower Moon where that feels like about 5 weeks. This does not feel like nearly 3 hours at all.
It doesn't. Like, it's very... the pacing on it does feel like it goes... Yeah, snappy is the right word for it. I think it helps that the fight scenes and the battle scenes in it, they're very intense. Yeah, intense probably is the right word. Like, you feel like you're drawn into these things, and they're very sort of sickly sweet and heavy on you, and you feel like you're experiencing with them in those scenes. I think they're so well shot that you feel inside of it, and it helps drag you, or not drag, because drag sounds negative, but it pulls you through with it. And for me, this is probably some of his best action work. Like, I don't feel like we see a lot of films that are action-heavy of Scorsese. He's mostly a dialogue-driven director for the majority of it. But I thought his work with directing the action here was fantastic.
I think this is probably why I like this more than a lot of the others. Because it is my... not so much explosions, but it is very much... the speed of it, and it being... You could say it is part action film, which doesn't make any real sense being a Scorsese film about its subject matter and the time period it's set in, but it's true. And yeah, there's fight scenes and there's car chases and stuff in most of these films anyway. But this seems, yeah, you are right. It seems different than the rest. And that's probably it probably makes more sense now.
Maybe it's because it's a period piece rather than contemporary. Maybe that's why it feels different to the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an outstanding film that I'm really looking forward to the TV. So I definitely need to watch the film again before we get the TV. So there's no date on IMDb to the TV series, so it's potentially years down the line at this point.
I hope it's not like a kind of a remake in like what they did with Snowpiercer, which for a bad example, but just a retelling of what's been before. They did it well with Hannibal, which I'm guessing you still haven't seen.
Still no.
Oh dear.
It's only so many hours in the week, Jim.
Yeah, but if you didn't watch all these silly things, then you could watch you could watch Dexter at last and listen to us.
Yeah, I'm still like getting through The Wire. Then again, I'm only doing 1 hour a week, but it's so fucking dense that I need that break each week to absorb it all.
Are you watching it properly in 4:3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, and I've got subtitles on because it's a little bit dense in parts.
When they re-released it, they'd done the Friends thing to it, and it messed it up. It didn't look right at all. Because obviously it was never intended to be aimed.
Yeah.
Yeah. it was never supposed to be filmed. It was filmed in 4:3 deliberately to give that kind of...
Okay.
Because you look at how old... It's not that old, really. And TV shows around that time of that type were being filmed in 16:9, but they intentionally filmed the wire in that to make it more real and not make it cinematic.
Yeah, you are right. 2002 to 2008, that would have been the prime, the boom of your widescreen TV, wouldn't it? So it was definitely a choice. But yeah, I'm watching it in the original 4:3.
The right way to do it.
Yeah, has to be done. Where was I? Yeah. So, moving on from that, another regular theme of his identity and isolation. I think we will probably discuss this more when we get to Bringing Out the Dead, because I feel like this is probably the one that Bringing Out the Dead most touches on, because we're driving around with Nick Cage's Frank. He's struggling with memories of the dead. He's pulling away from the other characters in his life. It's very much about the loneliness of this man and the psychosis that imparts on him, I think. So I think Bringing Out the Dead would be probably one of the better ones to discuss in this. But the one that I do want to discuss is the one that I think is probably De Niro's best ever performance, and that's Raging Bull. 1980s Raging Bull, I think he's probably Pesci's best performance as well. And it's not the one that he won the Oscar for. But for me, everyone was firing on all cylinders for Raging Bull. In all senses, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. It's between this and Goodfellas for Scorsese's best film, in my eyes. Because I think the way it's written is brilliant. I think the way that he shot it was just phenomenal. I remember at uni doing one of the modules on Scorsese, and they were showing us clips of the fight scene in Raging Bull. And it's got Jake LaMotta up against the ropes, almost dead on his feet. And the way the camera draws back and you see this ring looks absolutely massive and he looks tiny in it. And then he fires out of the corner and all of a sudden he's filling up the camera. And there's just little things like that. You think that's the mark of a genius when it comes to filmmaking. And Raging Bull is probably the best filmmaking that Scorsese's done on a technical side.
I mean, we spoke about this years ago, didn't we? I mentioned Raging Bull when we're talking about sports films and how they're always shit all the time because it's hard to fake something that's natural and instinctive. Yet the fight scenes in this do look like genuine. They're good. So if he was responsible for the choreography as well, I don't know. Not sure. But it works. And it looks, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was some proper like Heath Ledger shit going off in the background where how we step through every single person on this. Well, you could say it's an analogy for the film itself. In the ring, he was great. Out the ring, not so good. Mm-hmm. The way you're smiling is going to tell me that I'm right in a kind of wrong way.
So Jake LaMotta helped train De Niro. He even said to De Niro that you're good enough to go pro.
Yeah, well,
genuinely, yeah, he was. De Niro lived the life. The other thing it's one of my favourite stories, which has probably been told a million times already. Jake LaMotta at the premiere for this film was sat with his now ex-wife, and he turned to her and said, "Was I really that bad?" And she said, "No, you were worse." I just love that story. But yeah, fucking love that film.
Yeah, and again, lost to time because no one talks about it anymore.
Yeah, it is kind of sad that it doesn't get really mentioned any longer. But I do think it's one of the best ever sports films made. It's got one of the best performances of any actor you'll ever see. And as I said, on the technical side of things, I think it's a work of genius.
You could say it is to boxing what The Wrestler was to wrestling.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. It is, because it shows the human side of the sport, but it also shows the sport as well. So, there's enough there for fans of, if you like sport, you can go and see that film and get a good time out of it. if you're not interested in the sport, you can still watch it because the human side is still there behind it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I love Raging Bull. I'm not even. I think it was at university. We did that breaking down the scene, and then I went out and went straight to HMV and bought the DVD. So I need to see the rest of this film now. I need to know what's going on. I was just so enamoured by that one, like 20-second scene of a boxing match. I needed to see more. And again, even though it's in black and white and it's 1980, so there doesn't need to be in black and white. It was a choice that was made, but it really makes the colour scene where it's the family home video. It really makes that pop, and the impact of seeing that little bit of colour after being sat through the black and white. I don't know. There's just something enamouring about it when you know that Jake LaMotta is very much a black and white kind of a guy, but you see this family scene all in colour and just wonderful.
That's why you hate Schindler's List, isn't it? Because they just stole it from this.
I don't hate Schindler's List. Schindler's List is all right. It's not the best. It's all right.
It's the obvious film for people to say is their best film.
No, that's Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption. That's if you don't like film, your favourite film is Shawshank Redemption. Every time. But Schindler's List is fine. Yeah, I'm all right with that. There are better... Oh, this sounds awful. There are better Holocaust films. There are better films about that period of time. But Schindler's List's decent. Yeah. Just don't clip that out of context.
So this is why it's never on video properly, because this could be what we did with the one the other week.
Yeah. But yeah, Raging Bull, Stu.
Yeah, like I said, it must have been the first one that I saw, because I'm looking at the list, and it was because of the whole sport thing, and I was probably like the Tyson Bruno stuff at the time. Would have been, was that in 94? Was that
Tyson Bruno? That it feels mid-90s, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was around then, and I remember having cable for then. And I remember watching the old version of Soccer Around before it turned into what it was. When it was Russ Williams hosting running an arc, and it was almost like Sunday Supplement style.
Yes, I remember that. 96 was Bruno Tyson 2. 96. I think the first one was 89.
Yeah. So either Tiger was on now 32 as well. That makes sense then. Yeah. So it would have been around that time. So mid-90s when we first had cable, so I would have been 12. About 12, 13 at the time. And I probably into the whole thing of it all, and then watching Raging Bull. At that age. I think, yeah, this is good. But maybe it's the colour thing, maybe it's the black and white thing that puts people off. You know what people
Potentially.
like?
Potentially. I mean, that there are people who don't like black and white films just because they're black and white. They won't even give it a chance, which they're missing out in that case, in my opinion.
I mean, I don't know. I'm sure I've said it before that when I was really small, I used to think that they never used to be colour before I was born.
My mom keeps taking the piss out of me because I asked her what was it like in the black and white days. And I assumed, like you, everything was black and white, and then all of a sudden there's colour when colour TV came out. Like, that makes any sense. So even to this day, my mom keeps taking the piss out of me for asking her that.
At least I never asked it. I just thought it.
Well, I needed to know. It's interesting. It's only 2 hours, 9 minutes, which I don't know why I thought it was going to be a 3-hour masterpiece. But yeah, 2 hours, 9 minutes. So it's on the almost shorter side for a Scorsese film, because most of them are 2:30 plus, I tend to feel. And I know obviously it is set in the 60s, 70s, I think, if I remember correctly. When you watch it now, like the technical side of things, it doesn't feel like a film which is 44 years old.
44 years old?
Yeah. Like you watch it now, and the techniques and everything that are used in it, and obviously there's a little bit of upgrade in it because of DVD, Blu-ray, what have you. But it still looks fantastic for a film that's that old. Whereas I've watched films from later on in the 80s that look grainy and shitty and everything, but this doesn't. Like the techniques that they use have preserved that film so well that could be released tomorrow, and you would think it's a newly released film.
And I think this goes exactly what I said earlier as well. That you look at his film with Goodfellas, that he doesn't age, and it must be down. It's got to be something. It can't be like a secret sauce on this stuff, because like you just said, there's some films that look awful now, and I'm guessing The Irishman and certain effects in The Irishman are going to look bad in 2 or 3 years' time. They didn't look great in 2019, to be honest. But yeah, you are right. And
they're a little bit skewy, aren't they?
Yeah, it's one. I don't know what else you could do, really. You could not do it at all, or recast it, but it kind of works enough. And it is the whole thing of, that it's not real, so that's why you're questioning it. If you didn't know that, would you question it then? I don't know. But you're never going to get past that, are you? So,
no.
I don't know what you do with it. But yeah, the whole point of all these films, I mean, look at it, just looking at the 5 that I sent you, all of them. Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, they don't look ancient films.
No. They don't, do they?
You compare that to Dr. No or From Russia with Love, and they look like the 60s. And they very much do. And it's like some of them, I mean, there's one, when they were doing a Bond thing the other day on something or other, and they were showing the pictures of, like, the footage of Sean Connery in the car with that moving background thing.
Yes.
And it just looks ridiculous, because it was obviously took the piss off in spoofs later on. That technology did not work, did not come forward. Whereas in these films, there's none of that anyway.
No.
So however they did it,
right.
If it was foresight or not, or if it was just pure luck, who knows? But it works.
It does. It's interesting, like you mentioned about the Irishman, de-aging, what have you. I saw the other day, because Peter Cushing's, not his estate, but whoever was left part of his estate, they're suing Disney because obviously they used Peter Cushing's likeness in Rogue One. And as part of his will, he said that no one's allowed to use my likeness without this person say so. And they showed a picture of like the original Moff Tarkin to the Rogue One. It looks really bad. It looks even worse than I remember it. If you put them side to side, you wouldn't even think it was the same person. It doesn't look like Peter Cushing. It looks like a memory of Peter Cushing. It's really bizarre.
Yeah. I thought, when he's looking out into space and you just see the reflection, if they'd kept it like that, it would have been brilliant.
Yeah.
Because less is more. And like
100%.
Like the bit with Leia at the end, there's no need for that. That looks even worse.
That was horrific, wasn't it?
But in an exceptionally good film, them bits ruin it. And there's no real way of fixing it, is there?
No. They had no reason to even show Leia's face, did they?
No.
They could have showed it from behind, and we know what she was wearing during that scene. It's a very famous start to Star Wars. You know it. So that could have just had her handed off whatever it was. I can't even remember now. But just from behind. It was the R2 thing, wasn't it? We never had to see her face. But as soon as she looks at camera and smiles, you're like, well, who the fuck's that? Because it's clearly not Carrie Fisher. It looked horrendous.
It was obviously they thought they could do it, and so they did. When it's not quite there.
They were definitely running before they could walk at that point.
I mean, Alien Romulus.
I'm just looking now. It's not really a spoiler because
he's in he's named in the film. He's named in the and he's been dead for 4 years.
Yes, which is a bit of an issue, but obviously Ian Holm in that still looks ropey. Like after all these years, they've never got past Sid in Toy Story's mouth. Like, it always looks a bit ropey, and that's exactly how Ian Holmes' mouth looked in Alien Romulus. They've never quite got it right.
I mean, you can kind of forgive it because he's not a real person anyway.
Yeah.
So, and he's all fucked up. So, from that point of view, I mean, they could have made him a bit more fucked up, and then it would have been better.
Yeah.
But it just looks. There's the little bits where it looks like it's superimposed onto something else, which it clearly is.
Like, you can see the shadow of the closed mouth behind his open mouth talking at times. Like, he looks really off in parts of it. They've just not got it.
I'm waiting for the Corridor Crew version of that when that's on Blu-ray. They're going to destroy that scene. Well, again, everything else was brilliant.
Yeah, I enjoyed the rest of the film. It was a good, fun romp. But the Ian Holm... Because I'd completely forgot that Ian Holm passed away. I knew that was obviously at least the de-aging. I couldn't remember that if he'd passed away. And the whole time you're just staring at him and like, this looks really off and it's taking me out of the film. Because I'm more interested in what the fuck they've done to the CGI on the face than I am on anything else at this point.
At least with that one, though, he loved Alien. Yeah. And he said they could do whatever they wanted with him. So, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I've no issue with it when the actor... I mean, I have a slight issue with it, but I've less of an issue when the actor is, more than always happy to be accepted back in the fold. Yeah. The final theme, and in this one, this is probably the most universal of Scorsese's themes that he explores in his films, because this is in a lot of mainstream cinema, because it's the American dream. But unlike a lot of other films, I feel like he's a cynical fucker when it comes to the American dream. So obviously, the American dream, this is very much the principle that the opportunity of upward mobility is available to everyone. You can be born without a pot to piss in America, but you can die a billionaire just with a bit of hard work and sacrifice. But it feels to me that Scorsese knows that that's bullshit. That, it's not just about hard work and sacrifice. You need to have a little bit of luck to get there as well. And if luck doesn't work, you can always lie, cheat and steal your way to the top. And I feel that's why a lot of his films work in these ways. The Irishman explored this. Raging Bull explored this. And The Departed explored this.
Yeah, The Departed.
In The Departed, I feel like he shows the American dream as being this double-edged sword. How ambition and wanting power corrupts you as a person. How, like, the actions of DiCaprio and Damon, they're very morally ambiguous. They straddle the line quite well between doing what's right and what's wrong in order for them to take that next step to power. And how, like, was it Damon's character who was born into the middle classes, and it was DiCaprio's whose was the lower class person, if I remember right.
The Irish, yeah.
Yeah, he was the one who had to work his way up from the bottom, wasn't he? So I feel like Scorsese often tells us that the American dream is something of a facade. And I think that The Departed tells you that quite well, that it's about connections. That's why Damon's ahead, because he's got the connections to move up in the world, whereas DiCaprio's character just never had them. He was never born into the right family. And I think that's a lot of what the American dream is to Scorsese, that you need that bit of luck as well as everything else.
Yeah, and I think it's another reason of another realism hit, maybe I can say. Like I've said throughout the last hour, that it all feels right. It's not bollocks. It's not Shutter Island aside. It's not fantastical. It's all very grounded in what it is. And this is kind of like what you expect it to be like. You don't expect it to be, see, you invest here and all that kind of the usual Pathé News nonsense, which is all it ever has been. I mean, like Grand Theft Auto 4 with Nico Bellic and his cousin being immigrants and doing the American dream, and it all going tits up all the time, and you think, this is like what you think it actually is like, rather than what it was sold in the 50s. So, there's probably something in there that it's in a lot more of these films than I thought it was. Thinking, is it now? Like
imagine.
Like flawed heroes with ideas of grandeur that they can never reach.
Yeah. I imagine you could probably break down 90% of an American-produced film and there'd be a commentary on the American dream in there. I think it's a very prevalent thing in American cinema. Sometimes it's very positive. Like I think Rocky probably plays it up to almost a fairy tale, to be honest.
Yeah.
I like the Rocky films. This isn't a criticism, but they are a fairy tale of the American dream. I think that Scorsese shows it in it. Maybe it's just because I'm cynical as well, but I think Scorsese shows it in a much more realistic light than a lot of other films do.
Yeah. I mean, the real American dream is not having your pet's been eaten by immigrants, isn't it, really? That's
Don't move to Springfield, folks.
You know, have you seen the music, the song that someone's made of it?
The one they've done with the Simpsons one.
No, this isn't. It's like
okay,
like a dance track. They've turned like they're eating our dogs, and it's actually I might retweet it later. Actually, it's I saw that Miles guy did it because he obviously he's got away. He posted it on there, and there's no words for it anymore, is there? It's just every day something more ridiculous than the other.
Utterly bonkers. That's the only way to put it. Just insanity.
But then there was a whole list of people like eyewitness reports. There was someone saying that they saw them eating ducks in the pond. These Haitians chasing ducks around and they're biting their heads off and sacrificing them. I thought, well, they might have if they were hungry. I mean, I got no doubt that certain people would be eating cats and dogs. The Ming Moon in town got shut down because they were selling cats. So, and that was in Wolverhampton. We know this stuff goes on. But I mean, if I hadn't been so tired watching the Jets, I would have stayed up and watched that whole thing because it's almost like it's so surreal now that it's not even real life anymore.
I like how it was so utterly incomprehensibly insane that even Kamala Harris just couldn't stop laughing at it. Like she was trying to be all prim and proper and, you know, she's running for the president. She's not going to be an idiot. But the stuff he comes out with is so funny. She just couldn't not piss herself at it. It's just fucking insane.
But when he said it, oh yeah, I saw it on TV. It's comedy gold. Again, this isn't the American dream we were sold. Bringing it back, the American dream we were sold was like Clinton, and not that well. That was his American dream, I suppose. But growing up, and that was the kind of America watching Saved by the Bell. And, yeah, America is great. Yeah, things look like you could go over there and make a good life for yourself. When in reality, nah, you're going to be cleaning a pool or something like that.
Yeah, if you're lucky, you're going to be doing hard labour and eating rats off the street. Yeah, you are right. And I feel like Scorsese's done a really good job of showing that that's life. It's not all easy. And even when he's done it in like Wolf of Wall Street, for example, someone who is living the high life, you do see that American dream comes back and kicks him in the arse because of all the fraud that he was doing as well.
Colour of Money as well.
Yep, Colour of Money. Killers of the Flower Moon, I think, is also another good one, where it all blows up in everybody's faces at the end. Yeah. I think he's cynical, and I really like him for it.
I think the period stuff is probably my favourite of his. Like just because it's so. Oh, it could be complete bollocks, and it'll be a masterpiece anyway. But the fact that it's researched and the fact that it's as historically accurate as it possibly can be, adds a bit of weight to it as well. I think this has been done with a bit of love and a bit of heart to it, and he's doing it for a reason and saying getting a message across using actual fact, and that's pretty impressive, especially at his age.
Yeah, And I think he did a great job of that in Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
I think that's why at the end of Killers of the Flower Moon, it's ending slightly a few years later in their timeline where he's reading the end of the story.
Mm.
And I think that's why. I think that's exactly why what you just said is true. And I think that's how he showed it in that.
And that film, I mean, going back, what was it last? It was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The fact that it is as long as it is, and the fact that people can't behave in cinemas anymore, yet for the entirety of that film, there was not a sound made by anyone.
Yeah.
No.
It was in one of the smaller screenings.
Yeah.
And it was probably about 2/3 full, silent for 3 hours.
Yeah. They completely messed it up, and they'd put it as a small one because I kind of understand why, because it was 3.5 hours, and it was a very niche interest for people here. And would you give a super screen off for that? Probably not. But they clearly underestimated it and moved everyone, and that was even then. I moved seat 4 times because the seat that I was allocated didn't exist, and it had been taken away because it was broken. So I kind of hovered around, and in the end, I think I just moved 1 row back. But no, it was completely full, absolutely silent. That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
So
few and far between, aren't they?
And yeah, it was a slog. Like I said, it felt about 5 weeks long, but the respect there from everyone. And he was a masterpiece, even saying that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one I really enjoyed. Conversely, so this has just come to me because you mentioned Shutter Island, and I don't dislike it, but I don't think it's quite as good as what's held up. Are there any Scorsese films that you're not that interested in that didn't really work for you? I've got 2. One of them was Shutter Island. And I suppose this is stealing Ed's question from last week about, highly regarded films that don't quite work for you. Have you got anything that you don't think is deserving the praise?
Let me have a look. I didn't like Vinyl that much.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know why, because it's one of them.
Is that the TV series that he did? Because I don't think I've seen that one.
No. Oh yeah. It's 10 episodes.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I've seen that one.
You'd probably enjoy it. I think Matt would probably enjoy it. It's about music in the 70s and all that. So it's something I really should like. Let's have a look. Aviator. Howard Hughes' career. Well, we're talking about biopics. Maybe we'll watch that again, because I ain't seen it since I saw it when it first came out, and even that I didn't watch it at the cinema, and I just didn't really get on with it that much. Yeah,
that I forgot about that one, and yeah, it was a bit of a slug from what I recall. Might be worth a rewatch. The other film that I had, like Shutter Island, I think is fine, but I almost feel like people like it a bit too much, and it's not that it's a bad film. It feels like it's a bad Scorsese film.
Yeah.
If it was someone else, I think you'd probably be okay, but I expect something different of Scorsese. The other one I had, it's Casino. I don't think Casino's a very good film. And I think it's because it wants to be Goodfellas.
Yeah.
And he's just treading over the same ground again, and it feels like a retread, and it feels like a bit of a slog, whereas I never felt that at all with Goodfellas.
It's more Staying Alive than Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah, 100%. But anyway, so moving on, the next bit I want to talk about. So Martin Scorsese and his Academy Awards. From 11 films, he has had 16 nominations for Best Director, Best Picture or Screenplay, and he's won only 1 for The Departed. Can you name the other 10 pictures?
I mean, just now the ones that were nominated for any of them.
Yeah.
Well, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yep, that was for Best Picture, Best Director.
Yeah, I knew that one because that was last year. It's got to be something stupid, isn't it? Was The Irishman, because that was a streaming thing, I'm sure that was a big deal. Yeah.
Best Picture, Best Director as well.
That's 2. Let's have a look. Gangs of New York.
Gangs of New York was Best Director.
3. I'm guessing Casino would have been.
Casino wasn't. No Casino. There's 3 on here I don't think you'll get.
I mean, Temptation of Christ seems very Oscar-y.
Yeah, that was one of the ones I didn't think you'd get. 1989 Best Director.
King of Comedy.
No, that surprised me. I thought that would have been up for it, but no King of Comedy.
I mean, I'm going back further than the ones that I don't know. Looking at this now, like 67. So what, 4 or 5 there. Raging Bull, would it have been?
Yep, Raging Bull was his first nomination in 1980.
So if that's the first,
yeah,
and there's another 5. Oh, Colour of Money and Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street was Best Picture, Best Director. Colour of Money wasn't nominated. If I remember rightly, though, Newman was, and I think he won for Best Actor. Yeah, but no Scorsese on that one.
So that's... See, but looking at the rest, I don't think any of them deserve it. So
Goodfellas was nominated for Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay. The Age of Innocence, which is the only one on here I don't think I've not seen Hugo. Age of Innocence for Best Adapted Screenplay. And then in 2002, 4 and 6, we had Gangs of New York, The Aviator and The Departed were all nominated for Best Director. And Hugo was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director. So I've not seen Hugo. No. But yeah. And also, so as I said earlier, 26 acting nominations have come from his stars. 5 of those people have won. So I think that is Martin Scorsese's greatest strength as a director. He is a real actor's director. He gets the best performances out of all of his cast. I think that's where his strength really lies. Because at the very worst, if the film isn't great, the acting is always on point. And I think that's one thing I really, really love about Scorsese's work. The acting is always just tremendous with it.
It's almost like the Ancelotti of film directors.
Yeah, like that's a really niche but very good reference, to be fair. So there's 4 big names then who've been in most films with Scorsese. Harvey Keitel was in Who's That Knocking at My Door, Mean Streets, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Taxi Driver, Last Temptation of Christ and The Irishman. Joe Pesci was in 4 films, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Casino and The Irishman. He was nominated for 3 Oscars and won 1 out of 4 films. Fantastic. DiCaprio was in Gangs of New York, Aviator, Departed, Shutter Island, Wolf of Wall Street, Killers of the Flower Moon. He was nominated twice. And then Robert De Niro, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, New York, New York, Raging Bull, King of Comedy, Goodfellas, Cape Fear, Casino, The Audition, The Irishman, and Killers of the Flower Moon. He has had 4 acting Oscar nominations, 1 nomination as a producer on The Irishman, and 1 win for Raging Bull. So I like the fact that he works with the same people, that the people he knows he can trust, because they're obviously going to be the captains on his film set. They're going to be the ones he's going to entrust to make sure the acting side of things are working right. And it's got reward for it. The fact that he's got like almost 20% of his acting nominated actors go on to win the award as well, I just think's brilliant.
Well, and the fact that you look at all these people and a lot of them work together on different films, and yet it's very much like anthology-like, where you never confuse the same for one character for another because they're played by the same person.
Yeah,
not once.
Very true. Like you don't look at De Niro and You know, you don't see him play a gangster in The Irishman and think it's the same one from Goodfellas. They're completely different. Same as Mean Streets. Like, he knows how to get a performance out of these people. And like, don't get me wrong, it helps that Robert De Niro is probably the greatest ever actor. You know, in my eyes, I think De Niro is probably the best ever to do this. But you've still got to be a good enough director to harness that performance, and he does.
Mm.
And even in Killers of the Flower Moon, even though De Niro's old as anything at this point, he's still getting Oscar nominations because he's that good.
Yeah, well, how intimidating he was in that as well, considering his age as well and everything like that.
Yeah.
He was a proper scary fucker in that film.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely loved him.
And yeah, again, the woman situation in Killers of the Flower Moon. Someone who was
Lily Gladstone,
who was about to retire, who was about to leave acting altogether.
Yeah,
and then look what happens.
Her career was done, and then he just pulls her back for one last run. Gets Oscar nominated, and I think Emma Stone probably was better, but she was a close too. That's it. Yeah. Right, okay, quick break, and then we're back to discuss Martin Scorsese, Nicolas Cage crossover, Bringing Out the Dead from 1999, if I remember rightly.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us for the final part of the podcast where we're here to discuss Bringing Out the Dead. Stu, you said earlier you'd never seen this film.
No, never seen it, never heard of it. As usual, never heard anyone talk about it ever. The fact that it's a Scorsese film that, again, we mentioned earlier, that he's lost to time. I couldn't find it anywhere. I went on the usual sources, couldn't find it there. In the end, I went on to Prime, typed it in, Bringing Out the Dead, 4 stars. Went to rent it, wouldn't let me do it. I had to change account to then rent it again. I mean, this was basically because I watched it yesterday, so I didn't really have time for you to send me the file either. So I was watching it last night, and then I went back on a different Prime account, typed it in, and then it came up as a Tombeo Auvert, which is its French name on our Prime. And I thought, well, surely this film is not in French. And I clicked on it, and the French picture disappeared, and it came up as English. So this whole thing started in a bizarre way. So I knew nothing as usual. Went in completely blind. All I knew is that Ving Rhames was in it, which is always a good sign. And even though he looks 10 years older than he does now in this film, by some mad reason, maybe it's the moustache in his hair, who knows? And I was kind of in shock when it finished, but in a very good way.
Yeah. You know, throughout this film, whenever Ving Rhames was on, I kept thinking it was Carl Weathers.
Yeah, so did I.
It looks like Carl Weathers, and it just threw me for a minute. I thought Ving Rhames was in this. But it's written by Paul Schrader, who we watched Dog Eat Dog last week. So this is why I like Paul Schrader, because he writes really good films like this, which is why I was so disappointed with Dog Eat Dog, because it was such a misfire when I know he's capable of this excellent work such as this. I bought this. This might have been the last ever VHS I bought from our price. That's how far back we go at this point. I remember I bought, it was like 2 for 10 quid or whatever, and I bought Bringing Out the Dead and A Life Less Ordinary. Cameron Diaz and Ewan McGregor.
Yes, what a film, and what a song as well by Ash.
Yes, yeah. So there was that, and they were the last 2. I'm sure that was the name of the film. But yeah, that was the last 2 films that I bought on VHS, was Bringing Out the Dead and the Ewan McGregor Cameron Diaz. I'm going to need to double check the name of that because I could be wrong. But yeah,
it was A Life Less Ordinary, sung by Ash, of the film A Life Less Ordinary, 1997. Spot on.
Yeah, I know I haven't seen that film in forever, but I still feel like it's one I could probably remember pretty much everything about.
I went to see because of that song. because it was on the box all every day.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, just looking at it, the Metacritic score is quite poor on this, but I remember really enjoying it. Holly Hunter and Delroy Lindo as well. I do like Delroy Lindo. So, it's a Danny Boyle film. I didn't know that Danny Boyle directed this. That's why I liked it then, in retrospect. Yeah. But yeah, those are the last 2 VHSs I ever bought way back when. And it was very much because Bringing Out the Dead, I knew Martin Scorsese. That was the only reason I bought that film. And obviously Cage would have done Face Off and Con Air and stuff at that point. So, like, you give it the benefit of the doubt with names like that involved in it. And I remember watching that VHS quite a lot, but I probably haven't seen the film now for 20 years at this point. Because obviously VHS died out quite early 2000s, so just stopped watching them. But I remember really enjoying the film back then. So I was quite excited to watch it now to see, with 20 plus years on it, is it going to have aged badly? Am I actually going to remember what happened in it? Is this going to be a completely new experience? And there were bits to it that I remembered and bits that I must have just made up in my mind, because like some of it just didn't happen in this film that I vaguely remember from way back when. I was probably too young, because I think I'd have been 16-ish, 17 maybe when I saw it, and probably didn't understand it back then. But watching it now, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I didn't... I mean, thinking of it being a Scorsese film, I thought it was going to be about a certain type of thing, and this is very much not a certain type of thing at all. It's crazy. And the fact that you've got that recurring character with the water who keeps showing up all the time.
Yeah.
And when he's strapped to the bed and the chaos, and the fact that that's the crazy part, at the back, that they went around, Scorsese and Cage went around as paramedics, tailing them to get a feel of the real action. Yet the second half of this film, clearly no real paramedics went through that.
Well, you'd hope not.
Yeah, you'd hope not. As someone who's been to New York many times when you've been starring on Broadway, is it as mental as this? Because this made New York look insane.
I mean, yeah, it probably is. Like there are definitely elements to it that he did show on scene that you're like, yeah, that does feel very real. Like I have seen people outside of 7-Elevens and pubs and stuff with their pants around their ankles and what have you, like fucking 10 o'clock at night. It is a bit batshit in areas of New York. So yeah, it did feel real in those elements. So one thing I loved about this film is actually there was a lot of New York that felt unique to New York.
Mm. Well, again, that was going into the themes of things feeling real. That however, all the stuff that happens in the second half of the film, a lot of the stuff and the stuff that you see in the hospital as well, whenever they go back there, and the madness of it all, considering how old this is now, and this is now the norm here as well.
Yeah.
And you look at it and think, well, we only got a snippet from ER, and that's obviously not in New York. But it's like the police precinct in RoboCop. Things are just insane, and the people all over the place just kicking off. That's what it reminded me of. And you look at it and you think, yeah, this guy's clearly he's going to pop soon. You can see he's had enough already. that was just the very start of it. But yeah, did you see the other day where there was that infamous video of them smackheads in Philadelphia, with the one with the Wolves shirt on?
Yes. Yeah.
There was another one of them, but on the Hollywood Walk of Fame this time, and they're sleeping there now on the Walk of Fame on the stars. There's tents and smackheads and all zombified on there. And you think, yeah, this is what this film looks like, but now this is actually happening for real.
Yeah, I mean, with 25 years removed, and it still feels unique, or it still feels real to now, doesn't it? It's like you said in the first part of the podcast about how he manages to make films feel timeless, even though they're contemporary to their time.
Yeah.
And this could be released tomorrow, and it would still feel fresh almost.
Yeah, and they don't use phones in this at all, do they? It's all on the
No.
ambulance radio, so that works as well. Like nothing ages in it. So
No.
yeah, good point that is.
I really liked the revolving cast of his drivers. So we start out with John Goodman. I'm always happy to see John Goodman in anything. Even when he's not happy-go-lucky Dan Connor, I just love John Goodman. I thought he was brilliant in this, that he played someone kind of surly, kind of not aggressive, but you felt like he could be aggressive if Cage says something wrong to him. Ving Rhames was great doing his Carl Weathers impression. He was kind of affable and cool like Ving Rhames is. And then you had the absolute batshittery of Tom Sizemore. I don't know that I know Tom Sizemore from a lot. Isn't he in jail, if I remember rightly? Is that Tom Sizemore?
Oh no.
It feels like he's a name that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you anything that he's done.
I'm sure he's in Reservoir Dogs. I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's in...
film's coming out now, so I don't think he is in jail. He was in Saving Private Ryan and Black Hawk Down. I've seen Saving Private Ryan, but obviously I haven't seen Black Hawk Down with no war film thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's not... And it's not really about war. It's about... It's Saving Private Ryan in modern day.
Right. I mean, in fairness, like at this point, I think I probably do like war films, and I watched Sisu the other day, which I saw a trailer for years ago. I thought I wanted to watch that, and I saw it on MB, and I was like, let's give that a go. Fuck, it was really good.
Yeah, it was.
So yeah, I need to give up on my I don't like war films, because I clearly do. I just don't know why I had it in my head that I didn't.
Well, the thing with Sisu, it's got that old man on the cover, isn't it? And it doesn't look the most inviting filmed poster.
Yeah. It was kind of grim and gruff. And it was, but in a really good way, in a really exciting way. Yeah, I know Sizemore from... I know a few of the things he's done, but he has done a lot of dreck looking at this. There's a lot of 3.8s on his IMDb.
Yeah, he's very much do anything for a fiver kind of guy. I mean, you look at how far down he has to scroll just to get to...
He's almost approaching... Eric Roberts levels here. 244 previous acting credits with 17 upcoming. There's a lot of TV and like voice work and stuff as well. So yeah, I've definitely seen some of the stuff that he's in.
But Point Break.
He's just not an actor I can say I'm particularly familiar with.
Yeah, Point Break, Passenger 57. You've watched that?
Yes.
True Romance. Natural Born Killers. Heat. There's a load of these films, like Enemy of the State. So he's in a lot of films that you've seen. He's just never the main guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's usually a mark of a decent enough actor, to be honest, that you never see that person twice. It's always the character. But similarly, I'm looking at 2016, and he's got Calico Skies, which is 5.5, Better Criminal 4.2. Then he's got Undercover. Oh, it's just one episode of a TV show. Oh, he's in USS Indianapolis Men of Courage with Nick Cage that we'll be watching soon. And that's a 5.3. The Bronx Bull, 4.8. Hunting Season, 2.4. I mean, this is all 2016. He's got like fucking 20 odd credits just for 2016. Insanity. But I really liked him in this because he was Crazy Cage in this film.
Yeah.
Because Cage was about to go crazy because he's suffering with insomnia and he's haunted by visions of dead people. But he never really quite let go of that insanity. He kept it all in the eyes, which made that character so interesting.
There was the one bit while in the ambulance when he's talking to Carl Weathers, where he starts to do a black accent. And you think, oh no.
Yeah.
he slightly snaps, and then that's as far as it went.
Yeah. It was quite restrained from Cage. Because, and I think it's probably down to the fact that you've got someone like Scorsese in charge of the film. Because I think any other director would have let Cage go completely off the rails here.
Yeah, especially the bits where, like, when he said, "Are you going to fire me today?" and all that stuff. And you can imagine him like throwing his arms around and going the whole thing. And he doesn't. He's beaten down by all.
Yeah. So I thought he got a really good performance out of Cage here. I mean, slightly moving on to my crazy, that I find it crazy that we've never seen Scorsese and Cage together again after this. Knowing what we know, that, you know, a lot of Scorsese's his actors, they come back for at least one more go in a lot of cases. Him, and I don't know if he's worked much more with Patricia Arquette after these, but I liked their chemistry, and I think that someone like Scorsese could have got a lot out of them. Even in The Departed, I think Cage would have been a better character than Jack Nicholson. I would like to have seen Cage's version of that character.
Yeah, but the age thing works there.
Maybe I'm thinking of Cage today.
Yeah.
In that role.
Yeah. Yeah, that probably would work. And so the whole point of that is with how old he is, and that, yeah.
But yeah, I find it crazy that we've never seen more Scorsese Cage.
Well, especially, I mean, you got to think and hope now that if how he is now back at the top of the tree in people's hearts and minds, that it could happen again.
Yeah, maybe one more. That'd be nice. Like, I think Scorsese's got a few more films in the pipeline coming up, so who knows? It would be nice to see if we could get another one. And if we could get John Goodman in there with him as well, then I'm all for it.
I mean, after Dream Scenario, anything's possible.
I was going to watch that film again yesterday. I really liked it. I can't remember. I saw some article about the most awkward sex scenes, and all I could think about was the Dream Scenario one, because that is genuinely one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Just fucking absurd. I did love that film, but it's one of the weirdest things that we've watched. And let's be honest, we've watched a lot of weird things doing this.
How many is this now? 65 altogether? Something like
Probably more than that at this point. I'm not entirely sure. I have lost track of the numbers at this point, but there's a lot of them, shall we say. So you've given your good. What was your bad? I know you've given your crazy, haven't you?
Yeah, the crazy was the fella that tailed actual paramedics.
Yeah, so you're good and you're bad.
You know, the bad, it was a bit. It felt like two films put together in a way. I mean, this is very nitpicky stuff because I really enjoyed this film, and I am like reaching to try and find something bad to say because there isn't much at all. It just seemed to escalate from one to the other. Like it was hinted at that he was seeing these ghosts and this one person in particular, which we didn't find out who it was until about 3/4 of the way through, which was bizarre. But then when he goes on the acid trip and what's his name? Cliff Curtis, is it? The guy who was in Everything Now, who looks exactly the same back then as he does now. Yeah. As the drug dealer guy. And I thought that bit with the railings was quite funny as well.
I did laugh at that.
the song that they had in the background as well. But yeah, it might have been a bit too jump from one to the other in parts of the film, because you can see him slowly descending into madness, and you can see with his 5 o'clock shadow becoming like a 10 o'clock and all that kind of thing as he was going through, which I thought was a nice little touch. And the fact that it popped up on the screen occasionally what day it was, which didn't really need that maybe. The good, I thought everyone was superb in it. Like every single person was superb in it.
Yeah.
and you've already mentioned Patricia Arquette. I don't really. I wish she did some kind of. It was like a supernaturally kind of show that I watched for a few seasons of. Is it The Medium? Maybe was that her?
I'm not sure of that one.
The only kind of thing I remember. Let's have a look. The Medium. Yeah, that was right. 130 episodes. 2005 to 2011. Yeah, the dead send her visions of their deaths and other crimes while she sleeps. Right?
Never even heard of that.
It was really good. But it must have been cancelled. It must have been on Sky or something and then cancelled like after 2 seasons on there. Or they didn't show the end. So I never knew how it ended. But yeah, it was a nice, it was like Ghost Whisperer era.
Yeah.
Which Ghost Whisperer is really good as well. But you look at it in that show, there's not many other people who you'd even know of, even for TV. Oh, Angelica Houston, maybe. Obviously. Oh, yeah, she's your mom? I can't remember now. But yeah, Alison Dubois, she was in there. Yeah, 130 episodes again when series just went on and on and on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd never really seen her in much, and the fact that, again, a Scorsese woman is excellent.
Mm-hmm. I do like Patricia Arquette, to be fair. I've seen her in a few things, and she's always good. Like, have you ever seen Boyhood? It's the one that was filmed across like a decade or so, and it comes back to them every year. So the kid starts as a 10-year-old, and she plays the mum in that.
I know. I've never seen it. I know.
Good film.
So look, just go through it.
And obviously she's in Severance.
Yeah.
Which I can't wait for that to come back at this point. The Act, when she played Dee Dee Blanchard, Gypsy Road Blanchard's mother that gets killed. She's phenomenal in that TV series. But yes, she's another one, like, a bit like Jodie Foster, that always really good in stuff that probably doesn't cut through a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things on here. Oh, Stigmata, of course.
Oh shit, yeah. God, I haven't seen that for years.
Yeah, well, it was. We were devil worshippers apparently going to watch that. True Romance again. So she has worked with him before.
Mm. She's even in one of the few good Tim Burton films, Ed Wood.
Scissorhands.
No. I mean, that's not awful. It's okay. But
it's great. It's tragic and horrible.
I wouldn't say it's great. It's okay.
Oh, you're going to get our friends on you again now.
I don't give a shit.
You can't be.
Tim Burton is not a good director. He's a hack.
Jess, come on. Tell him yourself.
I'm look, if you want to come on and defend your boy, I have at it, but no, hack bastard.
Yeah, but the only hack bastard in this film was again the guy with the water problem, which again it just was very bizarre. Well, the whole scene where they're going with the twins, that was just the scene. The whole thing that he hated being a paramedic and he was just doing things to get away from doing his actual job. That was quite good. But yeah, the fact that there was no bad performances in this film at all, that was a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got similar, like I think on both sides of the camera that this film works wonders. I thought the acting from everybody was really, really good. I've mentioned all of his paramedic co-workers who I thought were great. The security guard at the hospital. Like, I want to film just of him talking at the camera for 2 hours because he was just so interesting and weird and wonderful. So yeah, everything on camera I thought was fantastic. One thing that I don't think Scorsese gets enough credit for, I think he's got a real good ear for music. So like on this, we got Van Morrison, R.E.M., The Clash. They all fit so perfectly well. Janie Jones, as they're driving around in the ambulance, everything's going hectic. The music's just perfect for it. So I thought that was great, really good. When it comes to the bad, I'm much like you. I'm really struggling. I feel like I'd be nitpicking to say of anything bad because I didn't think there was anything outright bad in this film. It does feel a little bit jolty the first half to the second half, but I think that is because we're sort of experiencing it through Frank's fractured mind at this point, because he is clearly going through something of a breakdown. So I think that's maybe why the film does feel like that. Like I say, it's proper nitpicky to say anything negative here because it's a good film. It's just a good film. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've answered it. Nick Cage, good. It's 2 thumbs up here. Is it 4 thumbs up?
Yeah. But that is the weird part about it. However good this film is, he's not excellent in it. He's just good. It's like this is not going to be in his top, even in his top 10 performances for me. He's just solid. Which, considering he's the lead in a Scorsese film, you'd think he would be a lot better than this, but it's not saying better in the fact that it needs to be. He's perfectly serviceable in what he does. The guy's a bit of a loser and almost at the end of it all, but he's not superb. He's strange.
I think when we see a lot of Nick Cage's films, he's far and away the best actor on screen at any point.
Yeah, that's probably.
And in this, there's so many other people who are giving their A game that he doesn't stand out because he's stood with people who are his equals. I think that's what it is personally.
Again, a bit like Mourinho and Chelsea, other than Ancelotti.
What's the other question we ask? Oh yeah, did you enjoy the film? Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. And do you reckon? Can you recommend this to people? Probably, yeah. I mean, if you can find the fucking thing, then yeah. But I was very gladly paid £3.50 to rent this for 48 hours. And it shows how much I did enjoy it. I watched the second half again this afternoon just because I didn't really get it. I did wonder, like, did I like nod off or something? I missed 10 minutes or something like that. So I just kind of skimmed past the first part and then got to... And I hadn't. It was just the way it was.
Yeah.
But so I've watched it 1.5 times, and it was equally as enjoyable again. But yeah, you can even say if you like Scorsese, because most people know yes or no on that point anyway, straight away.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really an action film other than the ambulance thing, which again, Heather just walked out and it was never mentioned again. Yeah. If people like the people in this film, then they will like this film.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you could like someone who just goes to, like Ed says, one of the casuals, like you said last week. I don't think you can say, Ed, go and watch this. Go and pay $3.50 on Prime to go and rent this for a day and watch it and enjoy it. So I don't think you could. I think you've still got to be a bit of a film connoisseur to enjoy this film because it is a bit strange, but at the same point, it is excellent. So everyone really should give it a chance.
I feel like how you said in the first half that Scorsese makes films for grown-ups. This is one of those films. Like if you just want a grown-up experience of watching a film that's not about capes and shit, stick this on. Like it's an exploration of what it is to be a man at breaking point. And look, we've all been there at work. We've all had days where it just feels like it's never going to fucking end. So I do feel like there are recognisable things in this movie. Yeah, it is. It's recommendable to people. Maybe not everybody, but I do think it is, something that you could get something out of if you're willing to go into it. Yeah. If you enjoyed Bringing Out the Dead, you may also enjoy. What do you reckon, Shoot?
This was a tricky one because I couldn't, off the top of my head, I mean, I thought Ambulance, because that is, not enough people watch that film, and that is proper stupidity.
I want to watch it again because I felt sick, and that may have destroyed the film for me.
Oh, with all the drone stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but I remember we talked about that at the time, when he goes up the building and over the top. Yeah, I watched that in 4DX as well.
God.
I don't really. we're going all maybe, so I don't really know because again, a very incredibly niche reference there.
Yeah.
More than Ancelotti and Mourinho.
That's so old. Even I recognise like the fucking references, and I haven't watched that for like 30 years at this point.
She's probably dead now.
I imagine so. I imagine she's long dead by now.
I know she. I mean, who is more famous though? The woman who played it, or Les Dennis doing the impression of her?
It's probably Les Dennis.
Let's have a look. Mavis, Coronation Street. Played by Thelma Barlow. Who is she still alive? She's 95 years old.
Jesus, what? Go on, love.
Yeah. I know she hadn't been in Corrie for years. But yeah, 95 years old. Fair play. Good on you, Mavis. Onto this. I want to say Joker for the fact that it's on my mind because Foley use it soon, and I need to watch it again. I know you hate it anyway, but still, I think Joker's easily more accessible than this. So that you watch Joker and then watch this afterwards, I think you get more out of it.
I think that's fair. I don't hate Joker. I just don't think it's as good as people make out. I think it's just an okay film. You just look like you don't believe me, but it's just fine. My answer is Cape Fear because I'm going to stick with Scorsese. I think it's the next level of insanity from a character through De Niro's Max Cady. I think that is a good exploration of a man at breaking point. Obviously, his breaking point is because he was sent to jail for a long time, even though he deserves it because he's a piece of shit. But it's a really good film with a tremendous performance from him. And Juliette Lewis is in it as well, which I didn't realise until watching it. But yeah, Cape Fear, great movie. I've never actually seen the original, though. People say the original's better, but I find that hard to believe because the remake, at least, is fantastic. So yeah, Cape Fear would be my recommendation on the basis of this one.
The Amityville Problem.
Yeah. How many of the Amityvilles have you seen?
The first one and the Ryan Reynolds one.
Hang on. Is Margot Kidder in the first one? Or am I thinking of The Omen? Because I get confused with some of... Because there was a few sort of possession-y ones all out at the same time, weren't
there? Margot Kidder.
Amityville. Yeah, Margot Kidder, 1979. James Brolin is the male lead in that.
1979. For God's sake, get it. Yeah, that's the one I saw, yes.
Yeah. Have you not seen any of the sequels? I think there's about 15 of the fuckers. There's loads of them.
No, but I presume they're all based on the couple, though. Because
the ones I've seen, some of them are based on the house and some are based on the family who ran. Like, they're such a hodgepodge of bullshit that pretty much all of the ones that I've seen are awful.
Because that's like the Conjuring, where the first, well, the whole thing is based on them. It's their story. And the Amityville stuff's the first 10 minutes of the Conjuring 2. Because obviously there was now need to make another Conjuring, another Amityville film, 5 years after the Ryan Reynolds one. So they just kind of hint at it, and like everyone knows what this is now. A bit like Batman, like we don't need to see the origin story again. Yeah, we get it now. Yeah, so that's what the Conjuring, well, the first two anyway, are about that the couple are going to get rid of it all. And then I watched Annabelle last week. That was the latest in that world. And that was a bizarre film.
You've got The Nun as well, which is part of that world, haven't you?
Yeah, you got Annabelle Reckoning or something, and another Annabelle one next, and then The Nuns after that.
Apparently, The Nun's really shit. Like, really, really shit.
I mean, I started and there's 8 of them. I watched 3 now, so I'm doing 1 a week to catch up. I don't know why.
No. I mean, in fairness, I have gone with like quite a weird niche watch. I'm going through Barbara Streisand's films at the moment, and I don't know why.
And you say you're not on Broadway.
Yeah, I don't know. I was listening to one of her like 60s albums, and then I put on A Star Is Born. I thought, oh, fuck it, I'm going to watch Funny Girl and all the other ones now. So yeah, Barbara Streisand is currently my go-to film.
See, we don't create this caricature. it's just real.
I don't help myself, do I? Let's be honest.
Oh, I did see though a new trailer for Wicked, which one that I hadn't seen before last week before Beetlejuice, and it came up as it before Dorothy. I thought, oh, this is a new trailer. So I saw 20 seconds before doing my thing. I'm actually really excited now.
I'm really trepidatious. As someone who's a fan of the musical, I don't like Ariana Grande. I think her voice is really nasally, and it kind of worries me that she's just going to butcher the fucking hell out of Glinda. I am worried. I have seen the new trailer as well, and it's done nothing to assuage my fears of this film. We'll see. I'll be there day one pretty much, certainly, yeah. But yeah, I don't know.
It'll be like when we went to see Last Christmas again. we're the only ones that not in a couple or over 55, like it was for that film.
Yeah, it was. What was it I went to see last week? I was the youngest in. Oh, it was when I went to see the new film with, Sir Ian McKellen, The Critic, and it's like it's a period thing, and everyone in there was like at least a decade older than me. It was a proper old audience. On the plus side, though, no one spoke. There was no phones getting out or anything like that. So small win, I suppose.
That gives me hope for Downton 3 next year, because I'm going to be the out. Thinking about it, that could be the case for that. I know when my mum went to watch the last one, the new. I wanted to say the new batch then, but it's obviously not called the new batch, is it?
It's not the Gremlins.
Yeah. Although Maggie Smith is getting on a bit now. The second Downton film, when she went to watch that, and she said that even she felt young, and she's 65 at the time. So Downton Abbey is amazing. You really should watch Downton Abbey. It's not what you think it is.
It probably isn't. But it just never appealed to me. Plus, Julian Fellows, is that the writer? He seems like a bit of a cock, so I just never bothered. Yeah, he is. But I mean, there is people in that series that you look at now, you think, oh yeah, you've actually gone on to do something good. Okay. Look, surprising, like Dan Stevens. I like Dan Stevens. Yeah, he was in there. I thought, oh, I've seen you before. Where have I seen you before? Then you look you up. Oh yeah, wow. He's in fucking everything at the minute as well. Like he's been in at least 4 films I've seen at the cinema this year. He's just everywhere. It's really well done. It's not just a show for pensioners and gay men. It's really good. And it's not Heartbeat. It's not Where the Heart Is or anything. That's to me, I keep thinking it's going to be Heartbeat meets Upstairs Downstairs. That's what I thought it was as well, and it's really not at all. It's something. It's got that vibe, but it's not really. Okay. I'm still not going to watch it. I'll be honest. Well, Stu, I jokingly said this will be 2 hours before the podcast started recording. We're now on 2 hours 3 minutes. I think it's time to say goodbye. Right. cagefightingpod@gmail.com, @cagefightingpod, socials and emails. Get them our way. Podcatcher, make sure you're subscribed, and a review would be phenomenal. Stu, would you like to say goodbye? I don't even know how it happens anymore. It just kind of... It's unbelievable, isn't it? It just flows like River Phoenix. Although, you see, River Phoenix would have probably been in a Scorsese film if he wasn't dead. Almost certainly. Like, I'm kind of surprised that Joaquin hasn't, or I don't think he has, because he feels like a Scorsese kind of a actor, doesn't he? Yeah. It's a bit somber. Yeah. Go
Go and watch Joker and cheer yourself up. Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Next week we'll be talking about Kiss of Death, Nick Cage film. That's probably going to be impossible to find as well, but that's where we'll be going. But it's goodbye from me, and remember, be excellent to each other.